Well, of course, I mean, for me to pretend that I know exactly what took place would be um, absurd in the extreme. I don't even know if the Ukrainian government has a narrative because there is so much political sensitivity to the issue of F-16s. Um, so much hope was placed by the Ukrainian government on the arrival of the F-16s to be a weapon of destiny, a weapon that would, you know, tip the scales in the favor of Ukraine. Um, Apparently, Ukraine right now has six or had six operational F-16s. Um, the aircraft are limited not just by the number of aircraft, but more importantly by the number of pilots, trained pilots. Reports were that Ukraine had eight uh, trained F-16 pilots available at the time that the F-16 became operational. There was a lot of talk about the F-16 being used to carry long-range strike weaponry, to be used as a air-to-ground weapon system to help blunt the Russian advance. But it appears that instead the F-16 has been configured solely for air-to-air work, and it's not about the F-16 versus Russian fighter aircraft. It's about the F-16 being used in a way that American, British, and Israeli fighter aircraft were used back in April when Iran launched its major missile and drone and cruise missile attack against Israel. The first line of defense for Israel were aircraft that patrolled the skies to shoot down drones, shoot down cruise missiles, to engage whatever targets appeared on their radars. The F-16s in Ukraine appeared to be serving the same function. When Russia launched a massive missile, drone, cruise missile attack against Ukraine, the F-16 was in the air, and according to the Ukrainian Air Force, successfully engaged a number of Russian drones and cruise missiles. Then the airplane went down, and there's speculation as to what happened. According to a Ukrainian member of parliament, the Ukrainian F-16 was actually brought down by a Ukrainian Patriot missile system. And this member of parliament said that this is because of the confusion, the lack of coordination, the lack of, the ability to, separate the F-16 from the air defense activities. So the F-16 was shot down by a Patriot missile. This appears to be the truth, and the reason why I say that is that the Ukrainian Air Force is just going bonkers right now. They want this person held to account. They wouldn't be getting this angry if this person hadn't exposed the fact that Ukraine shot down its own airplane. And this is the reality that they're trying. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. This is the lady who is part of the People's Party, right? She is the MP in Ukraine.
Correct.
She posted, yes. So what was the narrative at first? That Russia brought the F-16 down, right?
Well, I mean, at first it was that the F-16 took off, landed, and then was destroyed by a Russian missile strike on the airfield. The next was that the F-16 collided with a Russian drone, and so that a Russian drone brought it down. All the Ukrainians, I mean, the only reason why we know about this is that the Ukrainians published an obituary about the pilot who died, and this pilot was, had a big media presence. He was, touted as, this is the face of the F-16 program. This is one of our brave pilots who received all this training. He was photographed with the F-16s when they arrived. He was one of the pilots that were flying these things. So when his name was published, it was clear that, if he died, he probably died in an incident related to the F-16. And so then people started to, speculate and such. And I think the truth is now apparently clear. It's the only story that makes sense, that this plane took off, configured to air-to-air combat, was engaged in, because Zelensky himself, the president of Ukraine, has talked about the need for allies to work with Ukraine to build the kind of missile defense shield that the allies in Israel had built for Israel. He wants the same thing for Ukraine. Allied aircraft out there shooting down Russian missiles and drones in coordination with the Ukrainian version of the Iron Dome. And so it appears that that's what they were trying to do with this F-16. And it was successful to some extent, but in the end, it's a very dangerous environment. And if you don't train for this, if you don't practice, the deconfliction of air defense and air, actual aircraft, the Patriots looking for targets. And if the F-16 comes into its umbrella and hasn't deconflicted properly, it's going to be seen by the Patriot as a target, and then it's going to be shot down.
Thank you so much. Maria Zakharova, actually 2 days ago, during a news briefing, said U.S. gives Ukraine carte blanche for attacking inside Russia. Scott, what is the current situation in the Kursk region at this moment?
I mean, apparently Ukraine has made a significant incursion into Kursk. According to Russian sources, in certain areas of this incursion, Ukrainians continue to attempt to advance. The Russians are fighting back. They've contained much of the incursion. They've pushed back in other areas, but Ukraine went in with significant forces and have reinforced these troops. They committed a significant part of their strategic reserves. These are very well-trained, well-equipped troops. But it appears that they're being killed in large numbers. There's not sufficient reinforcements to sustain the momentum of their initial attack. The Russians haven't panicked. They've deployed forces necessary to blunt and contain the Ukrainian assault, but they aren't looking to rapidly eliminate it. And one of the reasons why is that in order to rapidly eliminate it, you would have to withdraw resources from the main effort of Russia, which continues to be the ongoing advances in the Donetsk area and the Donbass, where Russia is on the cusp of capturing the city of Pokrovsk, which is a major logistical command and control line of communication city. If it falls under Russian control, it'll be impossible for Ukraine to continue to support major defensive operations on the east bank of the Dnieper River. It will probably require Ukraine to withdraw to the west bank to go over and concede the Donbass and large parts of Zaporizhia and even parts of Kharkov to the Russians. So this is one of the goals of the Kursk operation was to get Russia to divert significant troops from the Donetsk operation, so that caused the Donetsk operation to lose its momentum. Russia hasn't done that. In fact, Russia has continued to reinforce the Donetsk area and is achieving dramatic results. And but the price that Russia has to pay for that is the continued political embarrassment, humiliation that is accrued when Ukraine attacked into Kursk and seized Russian territory. Ukraine continues to occupy this territory. But it appears that Ukraine itself realizes that this was folly, and now there seems to be an effort to withdraw what's left of these strategic reserves, reconstitute them to the best of their ability, and then throw them into the battle. Ukraine is saying that they need to launch a major counteroffensive in the Pokrovsk area to blunt the Russian attack and prevent the fall of the city. So, we'll see. Welcome to war, in the fog of war, and the reality of war. War is not easy. It's a very difficult proposition, and it's a very bloody one, where mistakes are measured in human lives and equipment lost. And both sides have made mistakes, but right now it continues to be advantage Russia.
Thank you, Scott. Before we continue, because I started in an unusual way today, you find Scott on Scott Ritter .com. So you just go all the way down underneath the live stream. You have the link already there. And actually our book that we collaborated on, which we will talk about before we end this live stream, you can purchase as well. Scott, so the latest report I read this morning on TASS was 7,800, I believe, troops that were eliminated from the Ukrainian side. And among those were, I think, 4,000 mercenaries. Of course, there were some Polish and French and British, of course, some from Colombia as well. What I would try to understand, and I understand this, what you explained, the dynamic of it, that Ukraine deployed the best troops to that area, the Kursk region. What I'm trying to understand, and I'm not a military expert, with this number of soldiers that Russia can, let's say, generate at this moment, mobilize at this moment, why don't they deploy, besides the aspect that they are taking care of the other side, why they don't deploy more to the Kursk region? Because there are civilians who are truly suffering at this point.
This is one of the political problems facing Russia. Abdialadanov, who is a Chechen a general in the Russian Ministry of Defense, a major general, he's the commander of the Akhmat Special Forces, one of the units that was sent to deal with this incursion, has said that the Russian Defense Ministry had lied to itself so often about Kursk that it began to believe its lies. They were woefully unprepared for what the Ukrainians did. But Abdi also said that, it was very difficult. It's less difficult now. They've got the situation under control. He said, one of his concerns before the Kursk operation was that even though Russia was winning dramatically in the Donbass, and he expects that the war was going to come to an end this year, and he continues to believe that, he said, I don't know about the reserves. I mean, they've got this significant 20,000 strong reserve, maybe more, with, modern equipment. They've been trained by the British, the Americans, the Germans. And, we can't bring this war to an end until we deal with that reserve. And he said, the Ukrainians have solved the problem for us. They gave us the reserves. So even though Kursk is a political embarrassment, understand this. The troops that Ukraine has committed to Kursk are stuck in Kursk. For them to move, they have to get on roads and be exposed to drone attacks, artillery attacks, air attacks. They'll be depleted. They're stuck in Kursk, which isn't doing anything for the main objective. Now, for Russia, Ukraine, one of the reasons why Ukraine went into Kursk was to divert Russian resources to Kursk to take pressure off of other things. Russia has reserves. By some accounts, these reserves may add up to more than 200,000 troops that are uncommitted but available. These reserves are, designed to do something. Right now, Russia is seeking the collapse of the Ukrainian army in the Donbass region, in Donetsk, and they're achieving that. I mean, every day the Ukrainians are just retreating faster and faster and faster and faster. Now they've denied themselves the ability to use their strategic reserve because they're trapped in Kursk, so this collapse will even be more precipitous. When that collapse occurs, there will be an opportunity, a window of opportunity for Russia to exploit the chaos that's going to ensue, to either capture Kharkov, the city, capture Sumy, or make a move on Odessa, or both. We don't know. But that option for the rapid exploitation of Ukrainian collapse goes away if you take those troops and you put them up in Kursk, because now Ukraine has won. Because what are the Russians going to achieve? They're going to drive the Ukrainians out of Kursk, but the offensive that they've expended all this time and effort on will have stalled, and it'll give Ukraine a chance to reconstitute its defenses. Russia has put a lot of time, effort, and blood into this offensive. And one of the things about an offensive of this nature is that it is designed to use attrition, continuous attrition, as a mechanism to wear the Ukrainians down to where they collapse. Continuous attrition. that means that the Ukrainians get no rest, that when they retreat, the Russians are right on them. And then they get destroyed, they retreat again, the Russians are right on them. And that pressure is maintained up until it's time the Ukrainians can no longer sustain a cohesive front and they retreat. This requires continuous pressure. This means that the Russians can't let up on their offensive. And if you remove the resources necessary to sustain this offensive by diverting them to Kursk, then the Ukrainians have succeeded in their objective of stalling this defense. Then they can bring up, 5 more brigades, which they've been training, to throw them into the line and stabilize, hope for other things. And if they stop the Russian offensive, that brings confidence back into Europe and the United States, who right now are looking at the situation saying, Ukraine's lost this war. Do we really want to pour more money, more effort, more resources into that we don't have? Germany's saying we don't have any more money to give. And the rest of Europe's pretty much coming to that same conclusion. In the United States, there's a debate, it's a political debate, how much to continue to give Ukraine. If Ukraine is just losing, and if the only way to prevent Ukraine from losing is to engage in a general nuclear war with Russia, that's not an attractive offer. Maybe it's time for the world to say, Ukraine, you have to end this conflict. Ukraine doesn't want to end this conflict on those terms. So these are acts of desperation. But the Russians, I think, are focused on achieving their strategic objective, the demilitarization of Ukraine. That occurs by killing Ukrainian soldiers. Right now, they're slaughtering them in Kursk. They're slaughtering them in the Donbass. Even though it's politically embarrassing what's happening in Kursk from a military standpoint, it's actually not that bad. They've contained the problem. And in doing so, they have nullified the Ukrainian strategic reserve. It's not going to do anything more than occupy land on a temporary basis in Russia. They will, if they stay there, they will all die. They're not able to affect the battlefield in the Donbass. They can't launch a counteroffensive at Pokrovsk. From the Russian perspective, politically embarrassing, militarily, it actually enhances their victory, because now they've solved the issue of what do we do about the Ukrainian strategic reserve. The Ukrainians solved that by committing it into the Kursk fight.
This is really psychological warfare.
Well, I mean, I don't want to put too much attention on that, because that detracts from the fact that this is about killing people. We can play mind games all we want, but at the end of the day, the Russian victory is based upon attritional warfare. That means that the Russians are killing people in larger numbers than those people are killing Russians. There's a lot of people dying right now in the Donbass on both sides. There's a lot of people dying in Kursk on both sides. So to say it's psychological warfare implies that somehow that this is more about, intellectual maneuvering. No, this is about men waking up every morning and going out to kill other men in the most horrible ways possible. This is a very, very bloody war. And I think that it's important that people understand that the psychological warfare aspect of it is more for a domestic audience to appease observers of the conflict. But for the people on the front line fighting, there ain't nothing psychological about it. It's purely physical.
Thank you, Scott. It was my mistake.
No, it's not a mistake. I'm not correcting you. I just don't want people to forget that war is about killing.
Of course, absolutely. But I want to ask you a very maybe different question, very general question. Do you think, is there anything that Russia is afraid of?
Afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that Russia's concerned. Look, you've been to Russia. I think we in the West sometimes lose touch with the fact that Russia is a very religious country, both in terms of their embrace of orthodoxy, Russian Orthodoxy, which is now a defining characteristic of the Russian nation, and of Islam. I mean, we cannot discount the Chechens, the Ingush, the Dagestanis, the Tatars. A significant percentage of the population of the Russian Federation are Muslim, but not in the Wahhabist sense. These are deeply religious people of faith, and they attach their faith to the Russian Federation. These are people who have come to grips with the notion that this conflict in Ukraine is of an existential nature, good versus evil. And they identify the Russian Federation as being on the side of good. And people of faith, when dealing with existential issues, are more at peace with the prospect of death than other people. The Russians aren't suicidal. You know this. They love life. They want life. But when the Russian government says that there can't be a world without Russia, he means just that. That Russia is one of the major civilizations of the world, and the West's effort to eradicate Russia, to destroy it, to break it up, as many people have openly bragged about wanting to do, the world will not live if that is indeed the outcome that they seek, that Russia will defend itself to the death. And with nuclear weapons, it means that to the death means everybody will die. And as Vladimir Putin says, he understands the consequences, but he says, we will go to heaven as martyrs, and you will go elsewhere. So I don't see the Russian people afraid. I think that they have transformed their country into something that is, from their perspective, a wonderful place to live. I happen to share much of that perspective. It is indeed a wonderful place to live. They are very proud, rightfully so, of their traditions, their culture, their history, and they are confident in their place in the world. They have stopped being self-defined second-class citizens. They no longer look to the West in admiration and say, oh gosh, I wish I were like them. They're proud of who they are. They've become their own. And I think this confidence allows them to stand up to the West and say, we will not bend our knees. And if the consequences of this will be a massive conflict, again, they know their history. We're talking about a nation that suffered 27 million dead. They're part of the Soviet Union at the time that suffered 27 million dead. And every one of those deaths, whether we can call them Soviet, but the Russian Federation, the citizens of the Russian Federation respect every single one of those deaths as a death of their history. So even though you have Ukrainians saying Ukrainians died, the Russians will say, but they died in the cause of defending Mother Russia, not just the Russian Republic, but the entire entity of the Soviet Union, which was largely a Russian entity. The psychology of a nation that has already sacrificed 27 million to defend itself is different from other nations which have not, including the United States. While we suffered 300,000 and 400,000 dead during World War II, our people weren't touched like the Russian people were. We don't understand existential conflict. And so therefore we sometimes tend to say, oh, well, the Russians won't take it to the end. The Russians are bluffing. I will tell you that based upon my experience in Russia, they're not bluffing. The Russian government isn't bluffing. The Russian military isn't bluffing. And the Russian people aren't bluffing. They like who they are, and they're willing to defend who they are to the death.
Thank you so much for this. Scott, before I go to a question about Israel, because we have to, and Syria actually as well, I want to ask you about when the new administration will come to power, to the White House, would you be willing, if you will be approached, to help to stop this escalation and tension that is heading towards the nuclear conflict? Would you be able to collaborate with this administration and help all of us to bring that peace again?
Well, the answer is, of course, I would collaborate with anybody to prevent a war and bring about a just and equitable peace. The question isn't about my motivations. The question is about the motivations of those who will come to power. will they be willing to, enter into a dialogue about this? I don't want to predict the future. I would say that I have no hope that that kind of collaboration could take place with a Harris administration. I would say that some of the things that Trump has been doing recently in terms of reaching out to people like Tulsi Gabbard, like RFK Jr., creates a theoretical possibility that my voice might be heard, especially during the transition period. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not, banking on that. I will continue to do what I do as an American citizen to promote peace, to encourage dialogue. And, you can directly influence by being a direct participant in events, or you can indirectly influence by doing things that resonate to the extent that they can't be ignored and they have to be acted on by the people in power. And so I will continue to push in doing what I do, with the primary objective of indirectly influencing outcomes. But if the opportunity arose where I could be a direct participant, I would not hesitate, because it is a duty and responsibility of, John F. Kennedy once famously said in his inaugural address, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And if anything, I'm a tool of peace that has a specialty in arms control. And I believe I'm serving my country right now and doing what I'm doing. And if the nature of that service were redefined in another way, so be it. As long as it's serving my country for an outcome that lends itself to peaceful cooperation, coexistence with Russia and others, and avoidance of nuclear conflict, that's my mission. So, yeah.
Thank you, Scott. I believe that you will. I really do. I want to ask you about Syria. I came across a video that was showing U.S. military base located in Conoco oil field north of Deir Azor, I think that's how you say it, was struck by multiple projectiles, resulting in explosions in that area. How important is Syria for the United States?
Not at all. Syria is not important for us at all. We're trying to make it important. We continue to be in Syria ostensibly of what we call the anti-ISIS mission. But the thing is, ISIS is an ideology, and you can't defeat an ideology with brutality. And of course, that's what the anti-ISIS mission is, hunting down and killing people. But understand that we're at the point now where, unless we find a way to resolve that which helps promote an ISIS ideology, which of course is alienation on the part of a people from, governing bodies, things of that nature, when they feel that there's no other venue possible for them to resolve the issues that they feel need to be resolved, then they'll turn to that which, right or wrong, they believe can do that. And the ISIS concept of a religious caliphate in the region, in the Levant, is one that's attractive to people when they have no other hope, no other opportunities. And America's presence in the region is inherently destabilizing, because we're not promoting peace and stability. We promote war and conflict. We empower Kurds ostensibly to create a safe haven for us, without understanding that in doing so, we create a Kurdish-Arab split. The Turks get involved. That creates another vector. We're promoting Kurdish independence, which alienates them from the Syrian government. So all we do is create vectors of violence, and it's violence that helps sustain the ideology of ISIS. So our presence is self-defeating. And it's too expensive. We're not getting what we want. Every year we're there, we get weaker and weaker and weaker, because our enemies get stronger and stronger and stronger, because increasingly people are siding on the side of our enemies, because they recognize that America's continued presence in the region is is not good for the region. And so at some point in time, we're going to have to make a decision to get out of there. And it should be a very easy decision to make. Politically, it's a difficult decision, one that's impossible to make during an election year. But once the election year ends and people start to reflect on just how expensive it is for us to stay in the region and how destabilizing our presence is, I think you're going to see the United States begin to withdraw from Syria. You know, one of the key things is we can't stay in Syria without Iraq. And already the Iraqi government is putting tremendous pressure on us to get out of Iraq. And if that happens, then we'll have to get out of Syria at the same time.
Thank you. I don't know much about Syria, so I'm learning. Thank you so much. Scott, a few days ago, I came across an article on the Israeli Times that was describing the current situation in Israel, the economic situation, and the experts, the economists, were saying that if this conflict will continue, they will be having very, very difficult time in Israel. So I have a very simple question. As people are escaping Israel, I don't know the exact number at this moment. I think last year was, one of my viewers commented around 600,000. Now I think it's over 1 million. I don't know exact number. Do you think that Israel will survive this? Or there will be new Israel, or maybe few new Israels created after that in the world?
Well, I've already committed to this. I personally believe that Israel has been fatally damaged by this conflict. That, you know, in order for Israel to survive, they needed to continue successfully the programs that they had initiated before October 7th. Namely, normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the Gulf Arab states, and then using that to create this joint economic enterprise, regional enterprise, that links itself to India and Europe. This is something that Joe Biden had bragged about, the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, a rival to China's Belts and Roads Initiative, that would invigorate the region and make Israel one of the major components of it, so that Israeli technical innovation and entrepreneurship would be able to marry itself with Arab money and create this economic engine that would be unbeatable. That was the goal. But in order to do that, Israel had to be a singularity, that there was no room in this for a Palestinian state. This is why the Abrams Accord, even though it talks about creating a Palestinian state, was really the death knell for the Palestinian state. It basically eliminated any potential of there being a Palestinian state. This is why October 7th is so important, because October 7th has actually brought the issue of a Palestinian state back to the front burner, and now it's irreversible. Israel will never get to that point where the world is going to accept there not being a Palestinian state. There will be a Palestinian state, and that's the end of Israel. You see, because Israel, as the Zionists envision it, cannot exist as part of a two-state solution. It's unacceptable. First of all, for there to be a two-state solution, you'd have to undo what has been bedrock policy on the part of the current sequence of Israeli governments, namely the West Bank settlements, the theft, the ongoing theft of Palestinian land, murder of Palestinians by Israeli settlers. I call them Brooklyn Jews because many of them come from the United States for the sole purpose of robbing and killing Palestinians to steal their land. These settlements would have to be dismantled. This process would have to be reversed, and this would create a near civil war or an actual civil war within Israel. Israel can't survive this process. This is a reality. The Israeli economy is in a tatters. In order to survive, I said there had to be this reconciliation with Saudi Arabia to create this new economic engine that brought Israel and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Arab states together. That's not happening. Instead, Israel's being strangled to death. The Houthi blockade is devastating the Israeli economy. The ongoing war is devastating. All these reservists that they're going to be calling up, and there's talk now of another 300,000 plus Israeli reservists being called up. These are people who are supposed to be at work, at jobs. Instead, their jobs aren't being done. This war is very expensive. They've caused evacuations in the north, in the south. Israel cannot sustain this economically. And even if this conflict came to an end, to get the investments necessary to get the Israeli economy up and running, you need stability that isn't going to come until there's a Palestinian state. Israel's not going to defeat Hezbollah. They're not going to defeat Iran. They're not going to defeat the Houthis. They're not going to defeat Hamas. And as a result, the notion of a peaceful, stable Israel is a thing of the past. Now, going forward, Israelis will always have to live looking over their shoulder, wondering when the next October 7th is going to happen, because the world is expecting an outcome, a Palestinian state that Israel is not going to deliver on, which means there will be more violence. Eventually, the Israeli population, there's a significant number of them who have dual citizenship. And they are going to recognize that it's better to live there than it is to live here. And they're going to start fleeing Israel. And I think when you get a certain percentage of the Israeli population to have fled, demographically, Israel becomes unsustainable. And now we're moving not towards a two-state solution, but a one-state solution, which is really the only real solution, a one-state solution, which means Israel's finished, done, goodbye. And that's what I believe will eventually happen. I don't think Israel can sustain itself. I think Israel will self-destruct. Israel is its own worst enemy. It's allowed itself to be defined as, maybe it always has been, but they've been hiding, as a murderous, genocidal state that has utter disdain for non-Jewish populations, calls Palestinians human animals, engaged in criminal acts. They've lost all moral right to exist. And so I think that's the direction we're heading. And I don't think it can be reversed. It can be, maybe Israel can be sustained a little bit longer if they sought peace today, and they change their governments. We might see Israel last a little, but again, economic ruin faces them, political self-destruction faces them. They're going to have to solve the West Bank settler problem, and you can't solve that by allowing West Bank settlements to remain. They will have to be dismantled. And once you start talking about the dismantlement of the West Bank settlements, the reversal of these land grab policies, Israel will fall in on itself. There will be a virtual or a real civil war. And again, that's the end of Israel. People will start fleeing. And once Israelis start fleeing Israel, that's the end of Israel.
So here, a few things from me, again, not being an expert. So this seems to me like, if I can use this term, US will not bail out Israel, if this is the right term to use. Second is, this might lead to world conflict. Absolutely. And third, if they go, those people, if they go to United States or other countries, I think the closest, actually, they might go to certain area in Ukraine that might be designated for them, and they will definitely come to Poland. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to go to where they come. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is a Polish Jew. A lot of the Israeli population are Polish Jews. And if they flee Israel, they'll go back to Poland. Ukraine, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what Ukraine is going to be in a year's time. How will Ukraine define itself? Who's going to be defining Ukraine? So it's difficult to give that, but they will go to where their passports allow them to go. That's a certainty.
One more thing on this. We have a few more minutes, right? Because sure. This is really, this is the topic I didn't know much about, but I'm learning this and I'm watching this unfoldment. Recently, just 2 days ago, Polish government said no more military help to Ukraine from Poland. We already gave you whatever we could give you, and Zelensky, of course, he said that Poland is weakening the efforts lately, and we need your planes. We need your planes. But what I'm thinking, and this is just my way of thinking, perhaps we are backing off with that support to Ukraine, because where support will be going to Israel.
But again, that implies that the Israeli problem can be solved with military support. With all due respect to Poland, You think you have more military equipment than the United States? What can you add to the Israeli equation that the United States can't? So Poland's not going to be diverting resources to Israel. Poland doesn't divert resources to Israel. The United States does. Other Germany did, but Germany's run out of money too. They've also shut down the spigot going to Ukraine. England's getting ready to have catastrophic collapse of their economy, requiring massive changes in how they do business, which is going to generate disruption amongst the population. So there's dreams of the building a brand new British army is absurd. You can't build a British army when the economy is collapsing. But the big thing is that's not going to save Israel, because the only thing that will save Israel is if Israel can agree to a two-state solution, and Israel can't agree to a two-state solution. Even if politically they could, the things that would have to occur for a two-state solution to become viable, the dismantlement of West Bank settlements, will destroy Israel in the process. So there's nothing that can save Israel. No amount of money that can save Israel. No amount of military equipment that can save Israel. I think Israel has fatally wounded itself by allowing itself to be identified as a apartheid state, as a state that practices genocide, where their leaders are indicted as war criminals because of this genocide. You don't come back from that. You don't.
Can they influence those in power in the United States to use nuclear weapons?
The United States isn't going to use nuclear weapons. My biggest fear about Israel is the Israeli nuclear weapon. Israel has said that it will eventually, as Israel devolves, I think Israel will start to lash out like a drowning man lashing out at would-be rescuers. And one of the things they'll do is, I think, trigger an Iranian response. Right now, Iran says that it will respond to the assassination of a senior Hamas official on Iranian soil. But to date, that response hasn't manifested itself, largely because I believe Iran has been placed under pressure by Russia and others not to do anything that would disrupt the BRICS conference coming up in October. So Iran is taking a backseat, but eventually Israel is going to do something that Iran will have to respond to. And this is where it gets dangerous, because Israel has threatened that if Iran strikes it in a significant fashion, Israel will take out Iran's nuclear infrastructure. And given the fact that much of this infrastructure is underground in facilities that cannot be taken out using conventional weapons, Israel would have to use nuclear weapons. And there's some things going on in Iran right now. I've long said Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. And Iran, of course, said we don't either. And they said that, nuclear weapons are forbidden under Islam. Their interpretation of Islam, fatwas, have been issued by the supreme leader, both first Khomeini and now Khamenei, that say nuclear weapons are incompatible with Islam. But the thing about Iran and the way they practice the Shia faith, the notion of vilayat faqih, the rule of the supreme jurisprudence, is that Islamic law can be reinterpreted to reflect the reality of the present condition. For instance, you now have Iranian mullahs talking about providing religious interpretation of the role of modern communications on society. I mean, you can't go back and quote Muhammad because there was no radio or television back then. So there needs to be a reinterpretation of things based upon the reality of modern society. So old fatwas have to be reconsidered based upon current realities. Iran has said that nuclear weapons are incompatible with Islam, but what happens when the Israelis say, we are going to nuke you? And now this isn't a question of the existential survival of the Islamic Republic, of a theocracy. There may be an opportunity for the reinterpretation of these fatwas. I'm not saying it's happened. I'm saying it could happen. Iran has positioned itself to where it can produce enough highly enriched uranium that can be used in several nuclear weapons in a matter of days. In a matter of days. And there appears to be a move on the part of Iran to begin research efforts in technologies that are useful in a nuclear device, such as the high explosives, the detonators, and things of this nature. So Iran seems to be positioning itself into getting ready so that it can produce a nuclear weapon, the device, without the fissile core. So it's there, ready to be mounted on a missile, which Iran has been building. And then if Israel were to attack, Iran would produce this material, put it in these weapons, and then strike Israel with nuclear weapons. And then we're looking at a general nuclear exchange. Israel will be destroyed. Understand this, that it's a very small country. Three 20-kiloton warheads would be enough to destroy Israel as a viable nation state. Iran will probably produce more than three. Iran's a bigger country, but again, the devastation would be horrific. Israel would hit major population centers, killing tens of millions of people. This is a real possibility, which now gets us back to what the world should be doing. In addition to putting pressure on Iran to rejoin the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, so that the world can have confidence that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapons program by having vigorous verification mechanisms, on-site inspection based. Israel has to be told that its nuclear program is off the table too. That they have to voluntarily disarm, let people in, dismantle these programs. And this is an imperative. I mean, it's a decision that needs to be made by the next administration. Unfortunately, neither candidate appears to be willing to confront Israel on the issue of its nuclear weapons. And as a result, the United States could find itself drawn into a nuclear war in the Middle East, which would be extraordinarily destructive and destabilizing.
Sometimes I'm just speechless because I'm trying not to visualize that future, Scott, but we are very close to it and I'm aware of it. Do we have time for one more question or you have to go
Sure.
to another interview? Yes?
That's your question.
Okay. I would like to now read a little bit because Zelensky, aren't we all tired of Zelensky? Everyone, can I just say it? Okay, I said it. Zelensky had announced that he will not extend its gas transit contract with Russia. This agreement allowed Russia to transport gas across Ukraine to Europe with minimum amount transit volume of 40 billion cubic meters. I really don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm bringing this to the audience. This move will impact European countries. This I know what I'm talking about. End of this agreement is expected to lead to a loss of approximately $5.5 billion annually from Gazprom, that is Russian state company. Here is my question. Well, first and foremost, I don't think this was his decision. This was decision of certain group of people who probably benefit a lot when the gas is provided from a different direction. But how this will, in your opinion, Scott, impact Ukraine? Because is Ukraine also using this gas, I believe? It's not just going through Ukraine to Europe, is it?
No, I mean, Ukraine does draw on it, either directly or indirectly, meaning that they can either offload it on Ukrainian soil or it goes through to another party and then is resold back to Ukraine. This is just Zelensky being suicidal and stupid and ignorant and narrow-minded. But let's put it in a bigger perspective. A couple of years ago, I write for a group called Energy Intelligence Group. It's the foremost publishing house on energy security matters in the world. And I did a debate in writing with one of their energy experts based out of the Baltics about the danger of cheap Russian energy. And the argument that this other person made is that Russia can't be trusted, that if Europe allows itself to become addicted to cheap Russian energy, Russia will then use that to manipulate and control. And I said, no, Russia will never do that. This is their business. And if they are seen as manipulating all that, that's not a good business partner. And there's other energy outlets out there that people can go to instead. I said, Russia will honor its contracts. Well, take a look at what's happened today. Who's the one cutting off energy to whom? Russia hasn't cut off energy to anybody. I think we have a FedEx truck that paused in front of the house. My dogs are going crazy, so forgive.
FedEx, for sure FedEx, right?
Well, I mean, either that or the FBI is getting ready to do a FedEx-based raid. But just one sec.
Thank you guys for watching. Please hit this like, okay. By the way. We're still here.
But my point is, Russia didn't shut off energy to anybody. Russia didn't blow up the Nord Stream pipelines. Russia didn't shut down the pipelines going through Ukraine. Russia has encouraged the continued transfer of energy. Russia has honored all of its contracts. It's not Russia shutting things down. It's the West strangling itself. And so Zelensky's just continuing this suicidal, self-destructive behavior of thinking that somehow by closing down these pipelines, they're hurting Russia. But they're not. Just like the sanctions didn't hurt Russia. Russia has adapted. Russia has overcome. It's Europe that's suffering. And so here we have Zelensky thinking that he's playing along with the party line, shutting things out. All he's going to do is billions of dollars of damage to Europe and billions of dollars of damage to him. He gets paid. And Russia, here's the thing about it. Russia has continuously met its obligations to pay the Ukrainians their transit fees, even during this special military operation. People are saying, come on, Scott, don't call it a special military operation. It's war. If it's war, Russia wouldn't be giving Ukraine $5 billion a year in transit fees. But Russia honors its contractual obligations. The West has totally misread Russia in this, totally misread Russia. And as a result, they just continue to commit suicide. Fortunately for Europe, Turkey has taken advantage of this self-destructive tendency on the part of Ukraine in Western Europe. Turkey, Russia has something called Turk Stream, and they have pipelines that bring gas across the Black Sea into Turkey. Turkey's becoming a major gas hub, energy hub, that will be directing this gas and oil into Europe through the southern corridor. And so whatever Zelensky thought he was going to accomplish by this will be undone by the Turkish vector. Again, this is just self-destructive, suicidal behavior. Why the West allows him to continue to do this is beyond me. I think at some point in time, there will be a solution to the Zelensky problem, and it won't be good for Zelensky.
Yeah, there will be a study, kind of like Dr. Freud, another case that we never had before. Something of that nature, right, Scott? Psychologically. Like another book, how you study this kind of human being. Very interesting. But in one of the countries, can I just tell you one of the countries that will be truly affected with this? I don't know if they are connected to Turkish supplier or not. It will be Slovakia. I just want to say hello to everyone from the land of Mr. Fico, because what this country can do in the position as it is, right? I mean, maybe with Turkey, I don't know how this works.
Well, I think you're going to see that. I mean, Slovakia has borders with countries that will. There will be a solution to the Slovakian energy problem. Again, the Ukraine has been allowed to think that it is the center of the universe, that all of European security hinges on Ukraine, that Ukraine, as Zelensky says, Ukraine's one of the most important nations in the world when it comes to world peace and stability. That's just fantasy. That's just a delusion. Ukraine is one of the least important countries in the world. It has no importance whatsoever. It can be erased. The only importance we give it is to use it as a tool. The West gives it to use it as a tool against Russia. But when this war ends, Ukraine will be erased, and the world won't even hiccup when Ukraine disappears. That's a sad state of affairs.
Scott, this is it for today, but before we end, I just want to encourage, well, first and foremost, I want to thank everyone who has purchased our book, because I know there are many people who leave the comments on my channel and who got the book already. The waiting time sometimes can be a little bit tricky, so don't be discouraged. Be happy that it's still there. That's what I'm telling you. Be happy it's still there, because you never know, especially with Amazon. So if you don't have this book, if you would like to support Scott and myself, this is the best way to do it, besides the much even more important aspect, and that is truly a book that will be a historical book, because no one is really putting this into history yet. So you have some facts and you have some true stories that is good to have. And also, thank you so much for all the reviews. We have 8 5-star reviews. To me, this is like really special. So thank you.
Well, hopefully we'll get more. Look, I'll put this out there too. The Ukraine conflict could end this fall, but probably won't. One of the reasons why Russia is targeting the Ukrainian energy sector is to create the conditions for the socio-political collapse of Ukraine over the course of the winter. Ukraine can't survive the coming winter. So that means that this winter, there's going to be a lot of discussion in Europe, in the United States, and elsewhere about how to solve the Ukrainian problem. And this discussion, because it is political in nature, is going to be something that the constituents of the various governments involved will need to empower themselves with knowledge and information so they can better understand what's being said. This book that Anya and I have put out there is a digestible book. I mean, to truly understand Ukraine in a comprehensive way, we would have had to write a 10-volume set, 500 pages per volume. And that's an intimidating challenge for people to say, I have to read 10 volumes to understand what's going on. The way this book was written is that we have done a comprehensive coverage of this conflict in a very small package. This is an easily digestible book, but it's a book that will empower you with knowledge and information. At a minimum, it's going to give you enough information that you can begin to engage constructively in debates, dialogues, and discussions. You can use this book as a starting point to go off and find more. Remember, each chapter is linked to an interview like this one, where a whole bunch of other information was, was discussed. So this is the perfect book to give to people. So even if you have this book, understand the holiday season's coming up. And what better gift can you give to people than the gift of knowledge? And this book is indeed the gift of knowledge. And plus, remember, you're supporting Anya and you're supporting me. We put this out there because we want to empower people with knowledge and information, but it's also a way that we're able to continue doing what we do through you purchasing the book. So I don't ever feel comfortable doing this, but I would just say that if you want to support us and support this cause, one of the best ways to do that is to purchase the book. And if you purchase it for yourself already, go ahead and purchase a couple copies to give to people over the holidays, because this winter, I believe, is going to be a winter of reflection by many people about what's going on with Ukraine and how to resolve this issue. And the book we've written is a perfect way to begin that kind of reflection.
Thank you, Scott. And before, can I add one more thing to this? It's important. Thank you. Because as you remember, Scott offered me a while ago the book tour in the United States that I was, it was in the process of idea, right? So we could pull this together. But I had a feeling that I didn't really want to go this year on that tour. And then later on, I actually realized, because the timing of it was kind of kind of the same time when FBI was in Scott's home, I would say. So again, I sensed something. First, I sensed the passport story. Then I sensed this story. Now I am sensing that next year we will go on a book tour. So I know that next year Scott is good. We are safe. All is well. And I just want to tell you, I will do everything in my power for this book to be translated into many languages. But from my side, I think I can pull off at least 2 markets with 2 languages. So that would be great. But with this being said, thank you so much, Scott, for collaborating on this book with me, choosing me for this project. Thank you for joining me again for today's conversation. And that's it, everyone. Thank you for watching. And make sure to hit this like before you go. ScottRitter.com down below this video. And someone was asking, are you going to be on Ask the Inspector today?
I'll be doing Ask the Inspector tonight. I'll be interviewing the Uhuru 3. These are a black nationalist group that's been charged under the Foreign Agent Registration Act by the Department of Justice. They're going on trial September 3rd. But this trial isn't about black nationalism or anything. It's about free speech. It's about the abuse of the Constitution by the U.S. government. This trial is the trial of America right now. If the Uhuru 3 lose this trial, America loses free speech, plain and simple, because the government will have politicized free speech and will have created a precedent where they can suppress the free speech and free press in America. It's a very dangerous trial, and it's one that many people aren't paying attention to because, frankly speaking, it's the people that are being put on trial are black nationalists, and I think the government picked them to be the initiators of this action for just that reason, because most Americans will look at it and shy away from it and say, well, that's not my cause, that's not my issue. But free speech is your issue. Free speech isn't about speech that you agree with. Free speech is about free speech. And if you start allowing voices that you don't agree with to be suppressed, then there isn't free speech. And eventually the government that's suppressing those voices will suppress your voice, because eventually the government will do something that you disagree with and you're going to try and speak out against it. And then you're going to be finding yourself on the docket. So I'll be interviewing 2 of the members of the Uhuru 3 tonight, and I'd encourage everybody to tune in and watch it.
Scott, you remember what time is it? Just to
well, it's between 8 and 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Ask the Inspector. And on Tuesday, I'll be interviewing Mary Costacottis. She's the Australian journalist who was just arrested or charges were brought forward by the Australian Zionist organization. Her crime? Retweeting. She simply retweeted 2 tweets, one of whom was a tweet from Richard Medhurst, who I interviewed last Tuesday. You see a trend here. There's a big focus right now on the oppression of free speech. This is a fundamental issue that everybody needs to get engaged in, or else what you'll find is you won't have free speech, and then you don't live in a free society, and you sort of sunk your own ship.
Vầng trăng cắt nửa vầng trăng, tôi làm con đò nhỏ chặt đôi câu thơ, bẻ đôi câu thơ, tôi làm mái chèo lứa sóng. Với người tôi yêu, để cùng hát khúc dân ca quê mình, để tôi sống giữa bao nhiêu sớm gian che xanh. Cùng em khoác chiếc áo tôi ra đồng, dù trời đổ nắng chang chang vẫn quang để nghĩa tình đừng nhạt đừng phai, thương nhau rồi đừng cởi áo cho ai. Thuyền tình tôi cứ lênh đênh dòng trôi, và người con gái tôi yêu nơi làng quê, có ai ngờ chân lắm buồn mà tôi ngỡ gót chân tiên. Để cùng ngâm khúc ca dao quê mùa, để nghe tiếng sáo thanh thanh cánh cò. Đã có lần em giận hơn tôi, đêm ra đông em đổ ánh trắng vàng đi. Nào ngờ chẳng chút nguôi ngoai hương buồn, vầng trăng lại sáng trong hơn đầy đông. Câu ca rằng hết giận rồi thương, áo nâu xong em nhuộm tình. Nào đâu dễ có phôi phai thời gian, còn đây mãi khúc ca sao em và tôi. Chốn quê nghèo ta có mình, một ngày bằng mấy trăm năm hỡi người. Cắt nửa vầng trăng, cắt nửa vầng trăng tôi làm